Hi everyone, welcome back to MUS119. Today we're going to get into Module 2A and we are going to talk about rhythm notation, which includes note values, dots and ties, and rests, and also proper notation technique. So we all know that if we draw a little oval shape on the staff, we can indicate the pitch that we want. But this doesn't really allow you to know how long a note should be, right? Rhythm is basically the duration of a note or a sound or a little passage in music. So it all has to do with time. So in this case, we are going to learn how to notate different durations. So first, we should learn about the anatomy of a note. So we have what's called a note head here. And then this little thing, this vertical line that comes out of the note, this is called a stem. And then anything that you attach to it at the tip, that's called a flag. And then we can use different combinations of these to indicate the duration that we want. So here you can read, it says, to show how long a pitch should be held, we add stems, flags, or beams to a note head, which is the oval shape of the note. So now we're going to look at the different note values. Okay, so here's the chart that shows you most of the notes that we will be using. But the first one to start with will be this oval shape that you've already seen so many times. This is called a whole note. It's called a whole note and it has 4 beats. So if you play this note on the piano, you will hold it for 4 beats. Let's say we are going to have this beat going on. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. That will be the whole note. And next we have a half note. A half note is basically a whole note with a stem. So we have a little oval shape and then a stem. It could be written 2 different ways. It could point up or point down. And this is a half note and it has 2 beats. 1, 2. So that's how long this would be. And then next, we have a quarter note. A quarter note has 1 beat, and it kind of looks like a half note. The only difference is that it's actually filled in. Okay, so you have to be able to distinguish between them, and that will be very, very important going forward. So that's quarter note, and a quarter note would basically just be equivalent to 1 beat. So if this is a beat, quarter, 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 quarter. Okay, so whole note, half note, and quarter note. So maybe just so that it's a little clearer, let me just write all of these here. Okay, and then I'm going to use what's called bar lines to separate them. And if we were to count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a clearer way to understand these different note values. And now, going on, we still have other kinds of notes. We have eighth notes. That looks like this. And an eighth note is basically half of a quarter note. It only has half of a beat. So let's say we have 4 beats. You can fit in 2 eighth notes in 1 beat. 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 Okay, so in this case, this would sound like. All right, so moving down, we have what's called 16 notes. And 16 notes kind of look like eighth notes. It's just that it has two flags rather than just one. Okay, and as you can guess by now, 16 note is basically just half of an eighth note. So in one beat, if we could fit two eighth notes, we'll be able to fit four 16 notes. And here we have 4 16 notes in one beat. And to count this, all right, so we're getting pretty fast here. And 30-second notes. 30-second notes. A 30-second note is basically half of a 16 note. So again, in one beat, we would actually be able to fit 8 30-second notes. I don't think I'm going to demonstrate this on the piano. This would be extremely fast. But I think you get the idea. Okay, so these are the note values that we all have to know in order to move forward. And now we're going to count rhythm in what's called the Kodaly method. So Kodaly was a very famous Hungarian musician who was especially well known in his work in the field of music education, especially for young kids. So he developed this really cool way to count that's, just very natural for young kids. So we're going to learn that today. So if you see a whole note, which now we know that it has 4 beats, right? So 4 beats, instead of writing the number, let me just write these little bars. I think that's a lot clearer to see. So if you see something like this, you will use ta, and you will just hold ta for 4 beats. So for example, it's gonna be ta, 4 beats. Okay, and next we have a quarter note. So if it's a quarter note, we just say ta for 1 beat. So ta, 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 ta. All right, and if it's anything that's shorter than a quarter note, like this one, 8th note, we're going to use titi. Okay, so in this case, the 8th note would be titi, 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 titi. All right, and if we go even further and do 16 notes, we'll use tika, 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 tika. Sounds kind of cool, actually. So here's a beat. Tika, 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 tika. Well, actually, I should be playing with the piano also the same thing. So let me try it again. Tika, 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 tika. All right, my hands are a little slow, but I think it's okay. You get the idea. All right, so for a half note, because it's longer than a quarter note, we're still going to use ta. So just know that for anything that's as long as 1 beat or longer than 1 beat, we use ta. And for everything that's less than 1 beat, shorter than 1 beat, we use ti. And of course for 16 notes, because if you say ti 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 ti, it kind of gets hard, to articulate it well. So we use tika. And there are 1,000 other ways to say the same thing. But for our class purpose, we're going to use these. All right, so using the Kodaly method, let's try these rhythm exercises. Okay, I'll try the first one, and then I'll have you pause and try the second one. So here's the first one. Ta, 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 ti, ti, ta, ta. All right, did you get it? Let me try one more time, but maybe a little slower. Ta, 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 ti, ti, ta, ta. Great. Now pause the video and try the second one. All right, the second one has basically the same kind of notes, so it shouldn't be that hard. Okay, let's try the second one. Ta, 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 ti, ti, ta, ti, ti, ta, ta, ta. All right, what about the third one? You can choose to pause the video or you can just do it with me. Ti, 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 ta, ta, ti, ti, ta, 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 ti, ti, ta, ta, ti, 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 ta, ta. Oh, that last one, I think I made a little mistake, but you get the idea. And for the fourth one, ti, ti, ta, ti, ti, ta, 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 ti, 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 ta. All right, so those are the rhythm exercises. Now we're going to talk about dots and ties. So previously we learned that a whole note is 4 beats, a half note is 2 beats, quarter note is 1 beat. But what if we want something in between? What if we want 3 beats? What if we want 5 beats? What if we want 1.5 beats? Well, that's when dots and ties come in. So a dot added to the right side of a note, specifically the note head, like here. That means we're actually adding half of its value to the note itself. Okay, so let me say it again. A dot added to the right side of a note. That means we're adding half of its value. So in this case, we have a whole note here. A whole note has 4 beats. If we add a dot next to the note, what's half of 4? That's 2, right? So 4 plus 2 gives you 6 beats. And here we have a half note. A half note has 2 beats, right? Ta. Now, if we add a dot next to it, we add half of its value. So 2 plus 1 equals 3. So that's when we can count ta, 3 beats. And what about quarter? Same thing. A quarter note has 1 beat. And if we add a dot next to it, then it becomes 1.5 beat. And then when we have an eighth note, it's the same thing. We just add half of its value. So an eighth note has half a beat, and half of half a beat, that's 1/4. Okay, so this basically is a 3/4 beat. All right, so that's what a dot means. Now we're going to talk about ties. Ties are very, very powerful tools because we can use ties to connect two completely different kinds of notes and then make them this one long note. Okay, so a tie is basically this curvy line that connects the two note heads, and we can use it to connect 2 notes or more than 2 notes. So in this example here, you can see that we have 1 tie, 2 ties, 3 ties. So one thing that you have to know is that only the first pitch is played. You will hear the attack here, but the second one is just held through, so we don't play it again. Okay, so here we have this example of a half note, which is 2 beats, right? So usually you would just play ta, you just hold it. And you can write the same note in terms of 2 quarter notes with a tie, and then that will sound exactly the same thing, ta, because that's the power of using a tie. And in this case here, it's the same thing. We have 4 eighth notes, right? 4 eighth notes. And the same thing, the first note is played, the later notes are not. So usually when I teach young kids piano and they have ties, what I like to do is just to cross out the subsequent ones, just so that they know, oh, you just play the first one and then you hold through it. So in this case, it will sound exactly the same. Ta. All right. All right. Now we're going to look at how dots and ties can be equivalent to each other. So we know that a dot added to the right side of a note add half of its value. So in this case, if we have a quarter note with a dot, a quarter note with a dot, that basically means we have a quarter note which is one beat, a dot is half, right? So one and a half, 1.5 beats. So in this case, we can reinterpret it as a quarter note tied to an eighth note, which has half a beat. And in the same manner, we have here a half note with a dot. So a half note has 2 beats, and the dot, which equals its half of its value, which would be 1. So 2 plus 1, 3 beats. We can interpret this as a half note tied to a quarter note, right? So 2 plus 1. And you can look at the next 2 examples by yourself. This is very important because you are going to see that in our assignment 2A. So please make sure that you really try to review this concept, okay? And know that these can go both ways. All right, so here's another rhythm exercise. This is actually a bit more challenging than what we had before, and you might not know some of these ones. It's a lot easier when you have heard the rhythm, rather than to like mathematically try to dissect everything written here, even though you can totally do that. So let me just demonstrate it just so that you get a feel for how we can use all of these different notes, dots, and ties, and all of these things that we just learned, so that you can hear how we can create music with all of these different tools. So let me try this. I'm gonna start from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta 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 ta. All right, so in this case, and even though I should have used T's for these, faster or shorter notes, but just to make it, easier for everyone, including myself, I just used ta. But just know that that's not the most correct way to do it. But for now, it's okay. And now the second one, see, we have these ties now. So let's hear how this example sounds. So 1, 2, ready, go. Ta 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 ta. All right, sounds very complicated, but that's okay. We'll get there. Now we're going to talk about rests. So, what do you do when you want silence in your music? Well, we use something called a rest, and just like how we have a different note value for a different duration that we want, we also have like a rest that's associated with those note values that we just learned. And also, dotted rests work the same way as dotted notes. So let's look at this example here. So we have a whole note on the left. That's a whole note, 4 beats, right? And we can have the same length of rest by writing something that looks like this. And I usually tell my young piano students that it's actually a hat that's flipped over. Okay, so this is a whole rest. It has 4 beats. And the next is a half rest. That's a normal hat, 2 beats. A quarter rest, this, I like to draw it this way. Kind of looks like a little thunder. And this one would have only 1 beat. And eighth rest, this is how I would write it. This is the same as an eighth note. It has half a beat. And then 16 rest, just like how we would add, another flag, another flag, another flag. It's the same thing for 16 rest. Just add another tiny flag. Same thing for 32nd, 64th. We just have 4 extra flags. Okay, so these are rests, extremely, extremely important. I'm kind of going through this kind of fast, but please know that you have to remember all of these. Next, dotted rests work the same way as dotted notes. So if you have a whole note, right? A whole note has 4 beats, and a dot means half of its value, which means 2, and this would equal 6 beats. It's the same thing when we want to write a whole rest, and if we add a dot, it basically also equals 6 beats of silence. Okay, and we can also write it this way, where we have 4 beats and 2 beats. So one thing you have to note is that we don't really use ties for rests. So ties are only for notes, but for rests we can still combine different kinds of rests to indicate that we want a certain length of silence. All right. So now we're going to dive into what's called proper notation technique. Okay, so this is extremely important. So we know that if we put a note on the staff, it has to be either on the line or in the space. Okay, so make sure that when you write these, you are trying to write them very, very clearly, and you're trying to put them exactly in between the 2 lines or on the line. So make sure that it's clear. If you write something like this, nobody would know what you're trying to indicate. Okay, so that's the very first thing. And then when you fill in a note, it's the same thing. Just make sure that it looks very neat, because music is a very, very precise and detailed kind of work. So anything, if you're not writing properly, it won't be understood. So when we add a stem, it could go either down or up, right? So here is the very important part. So know that if we write the note head right in the middle, then the stem can go up or down, either way. But if the note head is here, or here, or here, if it's above the middle line, the stem, most of the time, okay, this is not a hard rule, but this just keeps it neat and tidy. So the stem would point down. All right, and if the note head goes below the middle line, then the stem would point up. All right, so one thing to note is that when we draw the stems, if the stem is pointing down, then the stem would come from the left side. If the stem is pointing up, it would come from the right side. So please make sure that you're paying attention to this, okay? And also, we'll talk about beaming pretty soon. That's actually the next slide. So maybe I can just talk about it right now. So beaming basically is for notes with these little flags. So if you remember the 8th note, right, with the flag, I tell my young kids that these 8th notes run very fast, and they are extremely friendly people. So when they see another 8th note, they like to connect. So something like this, okay? So that's called beaming. That's when 8th notes get together and make friends, okay? So we can also have 16 notes when they get together we would have something that looks like this. And that's also called beaming. And for beaming, you could actually have more than 2 notes. So basically, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 4 eighth notes, you could beam all of them actually. So it's not just limited to 2. Okay, and beaming, the reason why we use beaming is to organize the music, right? Visually make it easier for musicians to read and interpret the music. So these are tools for you to organize them. So technically you can beam like, 2 notes here, 3 notes here, 4 notes there, but you will want to in general beam them in a way that people can see it and right away they know, there are 3/8 notes in this beat, or 4/8 notes in this group. So I'll show you more examples in the future. All right, so beams, what we just talked about, right? When we have 2 or more notes with the same flags, you can beam them together. So in the first example, you see 2/8 notes becoming this, and the 2 16 notes becoming this, and 2 32nd notes becoming this. Now, I actually want to go back to the proper notation technique and talk about something that you're going to see in your assignment that will be kind of confusing. So that's basically about beaming, right? So when you don't have any flags, any beaming to do, and when you have a bunch of notes, scattered on the staff, you can very easily tell that, this note, this is under the middle line, so the stem points up, this one points down, this one points up, this one points down, right? So we basically just use the middle line as a reference point, and you can decide the stems. But now, what if we're dealing with beams? So instead of just quarter notes, if we have eighth notes, for example, if you have notes here, 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 and here, what we normally know is that if the note is under the middle line, the stem goes up, right? This one middle line up or down, and then this one down, down. But then let's say these are eighth notes. How do we actually beam them? Well, in this case, I think you just have to decide what would look better. And by that, I mean you want to keep the notes on the staff. So for example, just to give you a more extreme example, if we have a note up here, or here, or here, right? If you're going to just ignore the rule and you're like, what if I just do this? Well, technically, that's not wrong. It's not wrong. It's not the most proper notation technique because we have these, going outside of the staff. So instead of that, if you can keep the stems down and sort of within, the staff, this generally looks better. So that's the rule of thumb. It's basically just a way to visually make it pleasant to see. Okay, so coming back to this one, what could you do? Well, you can just decide whether you want the stems to be up or down. And I'm just trying to find a place to rewrite this. Maybe I can do it here, down here. So we have this, 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 and this. For me, I'll just say, okay, I'll just point them down. That's okay. And even if you point the stems up, I think it still looks okay. It doesn't look too crazy. Okay, so when you encounter this question in the assignment, just use your best judgment. It'll be fine. So these are the basic rules, but when music gets more and more complicated, of course you have to start breaking these rules. Okay, so it's still very good for you to know, but just know that these rules are not 100%. Okay, so Good luck with your assignment. I think this lecture would connect directly with your assignment 2A. So good luck, and if you have any questions, please let me know.